Welcome to another episode of Let's Create a Healing Temple of the Cosmic Powerhouse. Today it is about how is it actually so difficult to overcome addictions. And I want to welcome now Hugo Vrsalovic.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here.
From Houston, Texas. And he's a creator of lifeiswonderful.love. And he's also a podcast host from the 1% Recovery. And we will right away in a few minutes hear more about that. But as we are in a healing temple session, so we want to open the doors first. We want to create sacred space with high vibration energy. And so if you want to go with me, just fold your hands in front of your chest and bring it up over your head, breathing in and out, and creating a huge energy bubble around you, around all over your body. And now I bring it over the safe space, create safe space. So it's also a safe space for you as an audience listening to this podcast episode with high vibrational energy. That is actually something which we have from the shamanic techniques, and the opening, the bubble is called Viracocha. So, and to ground ourselves, as we have then full attention to Hugo, we want to do some deep breathing, and I ask you to inhale 3 times and exhale into the ground. So like you would grow roots into the earth. That's called the grounding or earthing. So breathe in deeply and out, and in and last time in and out into the earth. So that's an easy way to ground yourself, to go out of that hamster wheel thinking and find a bit more balance and connection to your inside. So let's start with talking about your story, Hugo, talking about recovery and addiction. Is it something which is connected to a personal story? Tell us more about your personal story. What brought you to being a podcast host for recovery?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't want to be a podcast host. I mainly
like
started
me, I did not expect that.
I mainly just started to do some videos on YouTube, and then someone kind of encouraged me to just start podcasting because it was a way to get my message out there and be in control of my message. So my history with addictions and recovery is pretty much my whole life. I'm 58 years old. Had my first taste of alcohol, beer, at the dinner table with my father at 8 years old. Had my first bet on college football at the age of 12. So I ended up drinking. Obviously the drinking and the gambling escalated as I got older, whether it was high school, college, in my 20s. And I ended up stopped drinking after obviously a number of things when I was 30. And then I stopped gambling when I was 33. So I had like 20-year runs with addiction where things escalated, where it was about escape, not understanding my feelings about things that happened in childhood and being bullied, things that happened later on, like in high school, family bankruptcy. There was obviously always some, sexual things that had happened that, so there's a lot of these feelings just growing up, or not feeling like, that people understood me or I was validated. There was always like this void inside, this loneliness. So then, I found it up, I wanted to search, and I first went into 12-step rooms, first for alcohol. Then I went into therapy like a year and a half later. Then I went into 12-step rooms for gambling, like another year and a half. So over a 3-year period, it was slowly trying to put the pieces together to rebuild my life. To find, because I had all these academic, degrees, all this, this work experience, athlete, going to church every week as a Catholic. But the one thing that was never taught at home was emotional intelligence. And so I needed to learn about emotions. It's sad that at the age of 33, I was almost like an 8-year-old emotional child. And, like they say is, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I could be smart, I could have a healthy body, I could have this spiritual life. But if emotionally I'm a child and I'm immature and I'm insecure, relationships, eventually you're not going to get married, or people are going to see, or you're not going to feel this certain life about yourself. So you're going to, kind of feel like what's kind of going on. And so that kind of got me on this journey of recovery, which I've been on now for over 25 years. And so things have kind of changed over time of what recovery means to me. And then it just slowly kind of grew after, about in 2019, where I rewrote the 12 steps of recovery. And I also, just started to look at ways to promote and help people, because I believe recovery is beautiful. Your EQ is your IQ. And the most important thing is that you cannot outthink an emotional issue. And that's the problem with so many people with college degrees, that they want to have something to try to outthink what they need to do emotionally, and they can't. And so that becomes a problem.
So is it about programming? So I learned about the different developmental stages of the brain. So when you really see it from the embryo and the whole development of us as a human, like you say, in childhood already, if there's so much damage already done, so in the first months or years already will really kind of give you the prognosis to where it's leading to, because you didn't develop right away the healthy emotional foundation, right? And unfortunately, we see that very often that in families, there's a lot of conflict maybe, and a little one will feel all this, these energies around them. Then there's the other thing, like you told us, you get as a kid already some kind of alcohol or some beer or whatever, where parents or friends do not think about it, how much damage it's bringing to you, especially when you're a kid, right? So I also experienced that. I can say I also experienced that. And also at school there was easy going with that, right? You're having a party, you're celebrating, a lot of alcohol and so on, and very quickly you're inside in that on that kind of pathway, that you're regularly drinking alcohol when you're way too young.
Well, right. Your brain is still developing, up till 25. And, that just affects all your neuroplasticity. That affects so much of your brain transmitters. That affects so much more of certain things that you've got to, kind of deal with. And it's in a way that that's just difficult. A child's not equipped to it, and our parents just never, they always told us, just go to school, study, make sure, you exercise, but they don't really understand how the emotional damage is being done.
So I also feel, after I've heard so much about that now, also in the last months with trauma experts, and so talking about that we need completely, well, how can I say that, bring in really a new kind of educational training also in that area. And it's really for support to just be able to understand what's happening there. What is important when I have a little one. So to support them as best as possible, that the development of the body, mind, soul, everything is the best way possible, right? So there's just a knowledge gap. And of course, then you have the other side as well, the influence from the outside. So media, what they are telling you, and friends, family, from how they are conditioned, right? It's always, how you're connected with which people are you connected, where you get the influence, and then things happening. So how was it for you when you reflect that? How do you see the biggest driver that it came to that kind of path?
Or what I wanted to stop? You mean, is that what you're saying? Like, what was the biggest driver? I mean, it was just like, it's almost as like I was just getting tired of, like same old things, looking at certain things, how to change. And, you kind of just don't know. You think that you can kind of manage your drinking, manage your gambling. And reality is if you've gone too far, you really don't know. In a lot of ways, you don't need any alcohol or gambling in your system. So the main thing is that, just trying to get understanding of how much alcohol, how much gambling. And a lot of people just, keep doing this year after year. And in reality, gambling is the worst because the casinos have all the odds. So you're never going to win in gambling. That's that fallacy that somehow someone's going to win $1 million. Someone's going to make all this money by doing pretty much nothing. And that's where gambling is a lie.
Yes,
and alcohol,
of course, the system, right?
Alcohol is just infused in so much part of culture, whether it's a wedding, a funeral, a graduation, a job promotion, a breakup, a divorce, whether it's a celebration or it's something sad. Every culture, every country, and Europe is obviously the biggest consumer of alcohol. They say 15% of all Europeans are alcoholic compared to the US, 11%. I mean, we're not far behind you, but it's sad that so many, those are the people that have technically an alcohol disorder. We're not even talking about the people that probably are drinking more than they need to, even just from a health standpoint, from sleep, REM sleep, from all the increases of cancer or accidents or injury. Right. It's poison or violence, the domestic violence, homicides,
the nervous system, right?
Right. And all of it. But then it constantly gets celebrated. You see it on TV, like if you win a championship, everyone's popping champagne. You end up winning some type of election, everyone's talking about toasting, everyone's raising their glass. And so that's where alcohol, it becomes difficult. And I always say, alcohol is the only drink or food, if you stop doing it, people are always asking you, well, why did you stop drinking? No one will ask you, why did you become vegetarian? Or why don't you eat more meat? Or why aren't you drinking more water? Everyone gets so either insecure or what I would call somehow in your business about why you're not drinking alcohol when it's just a choice. Is it for whatever reason, I may just not want to drink that day, but everyone wants to feel like everyone has to drink together. Everyone's got to take shots together. And it's just not a healthy way to live your life. If you're talking about natural health, if you want to live naturally and create that temple within, you just don't need it. And so I think it just became my mission to try to explain really something about addictions, but on how to live better. To me, the 12 steps are very powerful, but there was always something missing. And that's where I kind of found my purpose in rewriting the 12 steps. Really focusing on the character traits, the spiritual principles like honesty, hope, courage, discipline that we actually need to implement in our lives so then we can move forward, so we can live our best life, so we can have, the love that we all want. We can have more money in our bank account. We can have this spiritual life. We can be invested in our hobbies. And so that's kind of where everything kind of evolved. And so then I had to start a podcast to amplify what I was doing either on YouTube or on other social media like, LinkedIn or Facebook groups.
Yeah, so you were already mentioning the spiritual side on that. So it's really more than the thing physical, alcohol and physical. So what is destroying in us, in our body. So it's much more, right? So it's really about the whole system. And also what you're saying about the 12 steps and honesty, also personal values you want to live then and having a different kind of life. It's about lifestyle. And we know that from ancient wisdom traditions a lot. So the Pythagoreans, for example, they lived that pure life. This is about purifying your life. And when you want to reach, so I don't know your experience, so my experience is going through the spiritual awakening and on this journey, when you really want to reach that very high vibrational level, there's no other way. You need to, when you walk the path through all your energy centers up to the highest chakras, energy centers, you need on the way to heal yourself, to work with your shadows, to integrate your shadows, to really care about body, mind, and soul, get a healthy mindset, of course. And it is also about food, about nutrition, because every piece of food, meat or whatever, also has a vibration. I know that is very new to many people, but it's all about energy, actually. So everything has a frequency. And if you're awakened and if you're already in a higher vibration and you eat that industrial food where animals were so much stressed and terrified, so in that kind of machinery, they landed, you will eat it in. So you will all this vibration taking in you. And that is true. So you can really, when you're in that awakened state, you can feel that. You really get sick of that because you feel the pain in you. The body is rebelling against it. And the same with alcohol now. So is my experience. So I don't know what your experience is, but what I wanted to say is it is actually anchored in very old traditions, ancient wisdom traditions, where this kind of lifestyle was lived, also following up the arts of mathematics and music and literature and so on. So to have a clean mind and to get all these brilliant ideas out of the source, so like behind me, the cosmos, the big consciousness or energy field, yeah, you need to make yourself lighter. And that lightness also, from my experience, comes with having a different kind of lifestyle, so purifying your life. But you already said in the beginning, or we said, so you're the creator of Life is Wonderful .love. So is that something in that recovery social media work and also in your podcast you're talking about?
Yeah, that's how I started. So that was the original kind of idea. That's what, the company is called. And so I always thought that, if you're getting over addictions, you want something aspirational. I didn't like a lot of these other kind of companies. They would always like name their either podcast or their company, to me, something negative, like last or, the addicted gamblers, story, Fold'em. There was always something like where
There's
you're
a
almost
negative
ending it
vibration,
about,
right?
and to me, like you were saying, it is about energy. It is about
Yeah.
flow. And so I like to tell people that recovery is beautiful and that recovery can be wonderful. So life is wonderful. And then when I was trying to get a domain name, the .com, lifeiswonderful.com was taken, but I could get .love.
That's
So I
so
said, well,
beautiful.
what else don't you want is you want more love in,
Exactly.
in your life. And so I was able to kind of put that as part of my kind of like vision or mission of trying to push just more love out there. And then that's why I also talk recovery. So few people actually get recovery. So to me is it should be, how can this be pushed forward? And that's why I kind of put it the 1% in recovery is want to really keep learning, be perpetual learners in any topic that we have, especially recovery, especially emotional health, that spirituality. And like what you were talking about, how to be around energy. I feel the same way, that life truly is about energy forces. Because when people struggle about concepts of God, but you can almost talk about like movies like Star Wars or some of the more sci-fi movies where they just talked about, well, there's some type of force out there that's drawing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is the what?
The question is it really science fiction, right? So
I agree. It's the way, I mean, it's no different that, you feel certain things with, with people.
Yeah.
That you're more connected with certain people than others. So you keep moving forward in that way. So to me, this is about energy. So yeah, it's about the food, but it's also around the people that you surround yourself. It's also about either on your phone or on the computer, the information that you absorb, or the books or the magazines that you read. It's how you almost like fill your soul and your brain and your mind and your body with all. So it could be about positive energy, or it could be about toxic negative energy.
Absolutely important what you say. Yeah, that is what many do not know or heard about that, but it's important to speak about it because to make people aware, so that it is so much more how we are influenced, and that with all of that, it comes also responsibility. So we have free will in the universe, in that universe concept, but it also means that we are responsible for ourselves. And when we see our body as a temple, and to really take care of everything, and see that we have a good, healthy temple here, a vessel who carries our soul and is good functioning. So we need to do something for it. So we cannot put the last terrible poison things in us and expect to be healthy. So it is really also about responsibility. And what you say about energy is also responsibility to say, okay, I don't meet that people anymore, because when I feel always bad and they drain my energy, it's not good for me. Or I don't meet that people because they always invite me for drinks, and then I cannot stay away from that. So it makes my life more difficult. And I need to have orientation to hang around people who are already where I want to go. So who are on my same frequency or have the same vision for life or so. So the peer groups have so much influence. So some say the 5 people who you are hanging around the most time with, if it's family or friends or colleagues, very often, it has so much impact on you. So if you're planning to really change something in life, to go through a transformation, to make some really next steps, go out of the current system, go into something new, it is so important to make a decision on whom you are surrounding yourself with, to have the support and not the contrary, that they always put you in. Because even when you're so committed to your journey, it will have a lot of influence still. So it's really making things more difficult. So what is your experience in terms of recovery?
Yeah, well, that's the same thing. I mean, that's why the hardest part in the beginning is that people need to accept that certain things will change. And people just still want to do that managing, you know, whether they go to a meeting or they see a therapist for a couple sessions, or maybe they do 30 days in a treatment center. They're still not convinced that certain things truly have to change, that you can never go back, that you have to move forward, that you don't have to dream of whether it's an alcoholic drink or a bet, and you know, or to cut off people that you know that either can manipulate you or they can kind of like almost like tease you into start doing something that you know that you don't want to do. So yeah, it's so important to really kind of look and really be honest. And it's almost look at everything in your life, whether it's, you know, the people, whether it's your behaviors, whether it's your lifestyle, whether it's obviously also the food that you, because, you know, to me, part of getting recovery is if you start eating healthier, your body will respond. If you start doing things,
I can imagine, right? So maybe you also have some special about for detoxification to, right?
Right, correct. You start to have to eliminate certain foods, which will help your brain to start to, because essentially what you're trying to do is heal your brain.
Yeah.
And you know, so it also comes down to why things like whether it's prayer, meditation, or yoga, or chanting, or some types of behaviors that can start to, like you were talking about, you know, how to ground yourself into building the foundation for you to move forward.
Yeah, not to be attached to the outside noise always, right? So really find the way to go within. We say that so easily, and I know that many people are struggling a lot to make even the first step, and I did as well. I was also not the specialist 10 years ago. I was so much in sales, and I had so much stress also, and cortisol level high, and was so much in my head. Still, it is a challenge in this life, in this environment, to really stay calm all the time. So we have this ups and downs. The most important is that we learn how we can bring us back into this peaceful place inside, right? That we learn how can I access this inner space, which I call the safe space, and that meditation is actually not something complicated. It can just be sit down in a calm place and just listen to your breathing, just only breathing. And we know that the thoughts come in. That is natural, right? So because people sometimes, I don't know your experience, but they say, yeah, but I cannot just be still and do think nothing. It's not working. Yeah, and it's very difficult. And we can just accept it and say, okay, there's a thought, it's coming in, say hello, so I see you, and just move it out. Just let it pass, but just stay calm again. And it's of course practice as well, routine.
Right, it's practice. Well, I think a lot of people think that they're going to be experts quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like almost anything. You don't go to, let's say you're trying to start a workout program. You don't go to the gym and work out for, let's say, an hour and a half. you may start in the beginning, just do some stretching and just work out for 20, 30 minutes. So your body slowly builds up. Like the same thing. I ran 2 marathons. But you don't immediately start running 12 miles on your first run. You run 3 miles and you may have to walk a little bit in between. You may run 1.5 miles and walk. It's a buildup. And the same thing with meditation. People always say, well, I can't sit still. Well, then it says there's something wrong with you. Start with, can you sit still for 2 to 3 minutes? Start there and time yourself. And, deep down, we all can do it. Because it shows you, people say, I can't sit still. That shows me that you have such a high level of anxiety. It's perfectly normal to be quiet for 30 minutes, but you may build up. And so you do certain things, or you can just do like light stretching. You can do certain things or just sit in nature, sit on a park bench.
Really very powerful thing.
Right. And if you can't sit at a bench, if you can't sit on a bench with like a cup of water or a sandwich and just look at the pond or the birds for 3 to 5 minutes, I honestly tell you, then you have to honestly ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Why can I not sit still? So that means there's so much going on inside of you. So much you have no serenity, you have no peace, and that's no way to live, because then you're going to end up probably stressing yourself out, and then no one wants to live in this constant high stress, high anxiety lifestyle.
No. So you have then adrenaline, cortisol, and so, but it's all, that's why it's really also important. I think now when you go outside, very often you see the people who are going for a walk, but they have that earphones in, they have maybe music or something to listening on their ears. And also I like that from time to time, but when I go outside, like you said, so you listen to the birds, and birds are really very powerful for that, because when you really listen consciously to the birds, you will recognize they have very interesting frequency. They really also have influence on us. So they give a lot of peace when you really open yourself up and attentively, consciously listening to them. And that can help a lot to calm you down. But it's only working, of course, when you open your channel for that, when you're receiving all this, and when we constantly shut ourselves down, so we don't get the nature noise and natural noise to us, because we have some headphones, earphones here, and then it will not work the same way. But like you say, it's already meditative when you go out and sit on a bench and just observe. And this observing, I think we really have, as a society, we're really struggling to just take this 5, 10, 15 minutes out and just observing, because we are so much driven from the outside conditioning that we have to do every time something, right? And with smartphones, as we have everything with us, so it's really some maybe other addiction, and actually it is, right? So also an addiction to not be able to stay away from that, not be able to just switch it off, just put it away, go outside without a phone. Oh my God, can you do that? So sometimes really, even me sometimes say, oh God, I forgot my smartphone. Can I survive? Of course I can, but it's really sometimes you have many things already on your smartphone that you say, oh my God, I need to have it all the time with me. And then this attachment comes, and it makes really things a bit more challenging, right?
No, it does. But I think it goes back to what your whole philosophy is about natural healing. You said about creating this temple is that it does it. I mean, you have to create it within yourself. Like they have those sayings, health is wealth. Yeah. And, really, and understanding yourself better. And, that to me is like you were talking about, it's so hard. That's why I encourage people, it's good to have a journal book, or if people say, you can do it on your phone. There's usually an app where there's like a notepad where you can just like have it open. You can just jot down notes in your phone or, on paper. That's where you kind of begin to get ideas of what you want to do with your life, whether it's about a business, whether it's about a relationship, whether it's about traveling somewhere.
Yes, it's a very, very good advice. So we work as coaches and in that area very often with journaling. And it is really very helpful. And it is even more helpful, when you do the handwriting, because you have that, it's just a process Yeah, you're moving your hand and you're bringing the energy actually also on paper with the tint. So it's even better. But most important is that you have the awareness and that you take your time and have your thoughts somewhere. And you can, of course, practice forgiveness, gratefulness. Many do gratefulness journals. And that is very helpful because it's really some kind of alchemy. So when you're thinking about, so what happened this day? What can I be grateful for? What beautiful things were happening? And if it is a nice small conversation at the grocery store or whatever with a colleague, so there's so many little moments in life where you already can be grateful. And at the moment, maybe we recognize, but we very easily forget about that thing. So that's why it's helpful to reflect also before sleeping, because then you have some positive energy, you have some positive thoughts before you fall asleep, and not in worst case, your smartphone and checking the news or something, social media channels. So it is really helpful to have that more healthy routines, and it helps us really for health, actually, to train ourselves to do things differently. So gratefulness, forgiveness, all moments. So what amazing things were happening. So, and I'm sure everybody has, it does not need to be the super, super big thing, but really all moments. And if it is a bird who was flying to your window and saying hello, so, or whatever it is. So it can be beautiful moments, and it really helps to reflect on that and keep it there, and also look back when you have maybe a moment, a phase where you're not feeling good, and just looking through, and then normally we come into a better mood, right? So when people come to you for going on a program, recovery program, so how does it look like? So what are the steps when someone is starting with that, making the decision to change things in life?
Well, that's always the key. I think if they're starting to ask the questions, they already know that they have an issue, they have a problem, because if you're already investigating, am I drinking too much? People asking, am I drinking too much? I go, you have to answer that question. But if you're asking the question to me, you've already know the answer. The answer is yes. Am I gambling too much? Well, you probably already know if you're already in that cycle, because, addiction has a cycle. Like in gambling, there's usually the winning phase, then the losing phase, then the desperation phase. And no different, like alcohol and drugs, there's always that euphoria in the beginning, and then, it becomes much more habitual, then it becomes chronic. And so the way I try to make things, straightforward in saying that I can help you truly understand the 12 steps, work you through the 12 steps in 18 weeks, because that's usually sometimes a lot of people get hesitant about starting or making any changes. Number one is because a lot of people making any type of change feels overwhelming, feels like it's too much. And so I think the idea is that, okay, well, how can we get people not to think that they're going to go to 12-step meetings for the rest of their life, or that therapy, or people go, ask about, well, therapy seems like it's going to take too long and it's going to cost too much money. And so I try to make things kind of straightforward, understanding the 12 steps, understanding therapy, understanding addiction, recovery. And so I created a system in 18 weeks where there's a syllabus no different than a college course, where you can look at everything that's covered each week. I have it on my website, lifeiswonderful.love, LOVE, where you can look at exactly what I cover. I ask 3 questions on each topic, because I believe that you have to get into some form of homework, and you also need some form of coaching, because the problem with 12 steps and then therapy is that it's driven by the person that has either the addict or the person that's struggling with alcohol, gambling, or drugs. And they don't have the discipline, because they're eventually going to start to think, even after a couple of weeks of, even if they like meetings or they like therapy, that they're not going to do the work. And it's no different. You can't lose weight or build muscle without going to the gym and doing the reps. You cannot gain any type of emotional intelligence without answering emotional questions. If I ask you a question like, it may be something about, okay, what do you want in life? What are your dreams or goals? But then also ask you a question is what do you tell yourself within your subconscious? because people don't realize is, our subconscious drives us, and we are filled with so many negative thoughts, either by ourselves with either self-doubt or by others, constantly telling us, oh, well, you don't have enough education, you don't have enough money, capital or money to start a business, or that person's out of your league, whatever people kind of, throw out at us. And so I try to make it as straightforward as possible and, kind of list, okay, this is how long it's going to take. This is what I cover. This is what it's needed over 18 weeks. You're going to have me constantly pushing you. I can be that supportive cheerleader. I can be that annoying friend that's like, God, stop. And then they'll finally do the work because they're tired of me asking them the same question is well, obviously you don't want to live this life where you have more peace, where you have more love, where you have more money, where you connected more with some type of spiritual being. Then do the work. And people need to be pushed. You cannot assume that people are going to be self-motivated. That is not the case. Only unless, even if you are faced with life and death, people still don't change behaviors and habits, whether it's around food or around habits like smoking or drinking, or, how much salt, if you're diabetic, all those things. And people just need to be shown that you have to do certain things daily. And that's why I made it 18 weeks. That's 126 days where you're going to be in contact with me, and we're going to move forward and do something to help you live and understand recovery, addiction better, so you have more self-awareness and your self-esteem goes up. But what you're talking about is then you have better energy about yourself.
Yeah, it's what you're talking about is about the habit curve, right? So that you need really that consistency and work on that to be able to see progress and stick on that, right? It just, like you say, it just takes time. It cannot be shortened. It takes time for everybody. I think I heard from everybody, also from the super experts, super successful people in personal development, from all of them, the same thing. You need to have this self-consistency. You need to have it established as a routine until you really be stable and to have it changed into a new habit. And our subconscious is really like the big elephant. Conscious is the ant, the small thing. So in relation, we have a big elephant to train. And also I love elephants, but it's really, maybe in nature they are more easy to deal with, but with our subconsciousness is really a very challenging thing, right?
It is, but you said something there that and people got to realize there's some days are going to be so easy and some days are just going to be difficult, frustrating. Because you're going to struggle in whatever you're doing, whatever it is, whether you're learning a sport, you're learning a foreign language, you're learning some other new skill, whether it's public speaking or playing the piano or recovery. Yeah, there's some days where you just want to just almost like give up and just realize, okay, today is going to be a struggle, but tomorrow can be a much better day. And you got to fight through. You got to fight through whether it's urges, triggers, lack of motivation, depression, whatever it is attacking us. We just got to realize that it's not like how they have those like say when people start projecting sales and it's like a straight line, it's like a vertical line. We're gonna do straight up, and there's no company, right? Exactly. Just even like if you follow a stock, it goes up and down, up and down.
It's testing. The universe is also testing us, so we are in it. Right,
but it's the same thing in any relationship. We've all had love, romantic relationships, and there's some days where it's just like perfect love, and there's other days where you just want to practically kill the other person. You just are frustrated, and sometimes it's just about you, but you take it out on your partner.
Yeah.
But it's like anything, there's no such thing. You're going to have days where hopefully you have a successful, healthy relationship. You're going to have a lot more positive days, but you got to understand that there's going to be days where it's not going to be fun.
Exactly. So, and that's why I guess it's so important that as a coach, we also help the clients to build up a supporting system, right? So to really trick ourselves sometimes. It's really tricking yourself, so to overcome these patterns which are coming through again and again until you've learned, until you have really established a new habit. So, and that can be different things, but like we said a bit earlier before, it is also to surround yourself with the right people. So it's really helpful to have a coach, and of course in family, friends environment, you have people where you see at least one person, I guess, where you have someone who is supporting you and taking you through that. Also, you have to do the work, but it's also important to have someone who is celebrating your success on the way, right? To motivate
exactly. You. Right. And I tell people, look, I can be your biggest cheer, but you've got to also do the work. You've got to start to believe this stuff. You got to start putting in and doing certain things that will bring certain results.
Yeah. Do you work with also so visualizing the goal? So the person that 26 days, so that you have a vision.
Well, yeah, that's why I try to. Well, that's why I make people write down all the answers. We don't they don't look at the questions and think about it and we talk about it. I say you've got to put an answer down on paper or in a computer, so then you can always refrain, like any type of course, and you can look back on answers, because otherwise it doesn't become real. Mm-hmm. They have to. We each have to truly understand ourselves better in a way where we can look at the answers and go, okay, this is what I'm working. This is what I tell myself daily. Yeah, I believe in kind of three things. Yeah, I believe manifestation is important. You got to speak it out into the world. You also got to visualize it. But what's also truly important, you've got to constantly state how you feel every day. Because a lot of people think that it's just about, your mindset. Your brain is still connected to your body, which means that you have emotions each and every moment. And you have numerous moments at the same time and throughout the day. And you can fluctuate up and down. But if you're not truly understanding your emotional state and realize how that affects your mindset, then you're missing out. So I believe that kind of, they all connect together.
Yeah. And like we said, it's important. What do I do in that situation? So when I'm feeling really bad, when I'm really feeling sad or even depressed, what do I do to help myself? For me, it was always music since childhood. So when I had moments where I did not feel well and where some critical situation or so, I listened to Michael Jackson. Or whoever at this time, but it helped me. I just felt better when I was listening to the music. And there's, of course, some evidence behind, so that we know now that frequencies help a lot, right? And you have protocols behind it. So there's also theory behind, but I did it already intuitively, because I recognized I feel better. So I need that when I have this and I feel I'm in a different world. So I'm listening to music. And here, of course, is also difference what kind of music we're listening. So maybe I've chosen the right ones, not always, but I knew that frequencies from that singer that helped me. Sometimes lyrics, we need also to be careful, because lyrics, when you're not consciously listening, you might program you in the wrong way, because everything which comes in is working on us. We are influenced by everything which is happening. So also listening to music, maybe radio, and there's a lot of bad language, for example. So, and we have a lot of low vibrational frequencies will affect you. Yeah, you're programming your mind, because we are really some very intelligent systems. We are taking in everything and it's working. Also, we are not consciously aware of that, but that is the tricky thing. Same with advertising and media, of course.
Right, exactly. But yeah, you said something important there. That's why sometimes it's good to re-listen to a song or reread a book or rewatch a movie, because there's a lot of things you missed the first time around.
Yes.
And then the second time goes, God, I didn't know that was there. How did I miss that piece? How did I miss that very important line or funny line, or, find that in the book or in the movie or in the song, and it's a lyric, and then you go, that's, I think it has meaning. And then obviously we can't re-listen, reread, rewatch everything. But, things that, had some type of impact of us, sometimes we may need to relook at certain pieces and go back, because I found that very helpful. to truly understand that topic.
Absolutely. So from my shamanic perspective, of course, we go back in about the soul and even do soul retrieval. So we say, okay, you might have lost some parts of your soul, so theoretically, in traumatic situations from this life or even before. And we know about the existence of transgenerational trauma, which is affecting, I would say, everybody, because everybody's family somewhat were in some kind of war. So when you look back to further generations, so we all carry something in our genes which is working on us. So that comes additionally to that what we experience in our current life, right? So there's so much to do with trauma healing, and that is where we also can help with the shamanic energy medicine to work with it on the soul level and go back and release. And it's again energy works. We see if there's a contract, something like belief system, and we can have some new story build up to really create this new version. So there's a lot of different ways we can work with that. But the center point is that the person is open to that, right? You cannot someone push into something if they are not open, if they don't want it, if they don't understand. And I guess that for families or for the life partner is a difficult thing to maybe observe something and to feel you cannot help because the person is not willing to change. So do you experience that often, so that maybe family or life partner come up and you recognize the person is coming to you, but actually you feel they are not ready, they are not really willing to go on this new path?
Yeah, I mean, that happens. Unfortunately, that can impact your recovery, depending not only, obviously it begins with the person. How willing are they willing to accept their current state? And how much are they willing to accept how much they know and don't know and are willing to learn? And they need, everyone needs help. That's one of the things that I changed step 2. In the original step, it talks about, you try to come to believe that a higher power can help change you. I'm a big believer is that you need human and divine help. And a lot of times people have to realize is you need help, whether it's about hire a trainer in the gym or go to take a class on something or learn something about how to grow your money through some type of financial advisor, or how to make your business more efficient, how to understand now, of course, with AI, but other ways and other systems and program software. We've got to really just almost reach out, and learning doesn't stop after you get that university degree. And, later on, it took me like 13 years between my undergraduate and graduate degrees. I went back in my 30s after a few years of recovery. I went back to get a master's in business. And, you appreciate it differently at 35 than at 22. But it is still very impactful. But I always encourage people, I still hire different types of coaches or sponsors or mentors or professors, whatever it is, because that's the only way to keep growing. I think that's why people get frustrated. And then also look at if your family member or your partner doesn't want to grow, that your relationship may have to end. And I know it's difficult. It's so hard, but I love that person. I go, but if the relationship, and it's not just about love, because as we all know, relationships are much more complex than just all I need to do, you just need to just love me. It's not that. There's a lot there to have a healthy relationship, and sometimes you got to cut people out or change people. That maybe not completely, but you may have to reformat it. And a lot of times, unfortunately, like family members or spouses of the addict say, well, that's not my problem, it's their problem. And that's not true, because usually an addiction affects the whole family.
Absolutely.
And if you're not willing to look,
are suffering so much, right? Because the kids,
right,
so little ones, they get everything.
And now it's worse because the smartphone is already manipulating and changing their brain chemistry and brainwashing them into believing there's kids nowadays are exposed too early to violence, to sex, to now it's gambling, because gambling is everywhere and gambling is the new pandemic. And then on top of that, you already have alcohol that seeps throughout everything. Yeah. So if you combine all that early exposure to alcohol, gambling, sex, and violence, kids are just not prepared. And then you don't give them any emotional training, and then you expect a child to end up completely healthy. It's not a formula for success.
Very important what you say. So it is really, and it makes me really feel sad because you can recognize somewhat it is more or less accepted in the society and also in the political body. Also, there is campaigns and so on, but you feel when you're really a truth seeker and you're very sensitive, you feel it's not here fully aware in what kind of critical situation we brought us all, and especially the kids. Like you say, they have such a challenging life. And then we take away music and sports at school very often, additionally to that, which is so helpful on the other side to build up strengths, right? So that's really why we have although this your podcast, me, my show, Let's Create a Healing Temple, to talk about the better way to do it and to make us aware that so many things are going wrong, really the wrong way. And it's time to change that. Everybody in his, her area, and hopefully in a much bigger scale as well. So that is, yeah.
And so one thing that I have on my website, I came up with it free. It's completely free. Anyone can go to my website and download what we have is what I call a recovery growth scorecard. And you're talking about natural healing. People don't realize before you start taking any type of pills or you start doing any types of even therapy or working with anybody, we can start the process of healing ourselves by using natural hormones, implementing how can we naturally increase our serotonin, our dopamine, our oxytocin, our endorphins. And so within this whole scorecard, there's ways that each person can keep score on a daily, weekly schedule. Okay, do I listen to music? Did I laugh today? Did I pray? Did I exercise? Did I go out to the sun? Did I complete a task? Did I hug someone? Did I actually, pet, walk and connect with my cat or dog? And all these, did I eat healthy food? Did I walk barefoot on the ground to kind of do that kind of grounding? All these wonderful, did I do yoga? Journaling, so I have this whole list of about 40 items, and people don't realize that is really a way people don't realize the human body is probably the greatest invention. It is so capable of healing itself from so much, because we all put so much abuse on our bodies, and we also don't realize is that we also have this incredible working machine that can heal we see all these studies about how the brain can heal, how the body can heal, whether we're too big, too small, how we can build muscle, how we can create healthy organs, how we can almost slow down the aging process, how we can speed it up. We can go in any direction. We can take our bodies, where we just totally
examples, right?
Right.
We are also role models, examples of that. Yeah.
So I try to tell people, look, there's so many ways to heal your body, and a lot of ways are actually don't even cost any money. We can do so many things daily that are free, but that require, yes, you get on your knees and pray. Yes, go actually have a conversation, make your bed, do certain things each and every day where you're taking care of yourself. And, yes, you can go exercise, stretch, there's so many things that people can do. I think, complement what you're doing, talking about, creating that healing temple, that becomes so valuable. And so, so I encourage people, and I give it away for free because I think it's so important that people have free resource, because everybody wants something for free. And I always try to say, okay, look, you can give, something to do, because everyone will say, well, and I think that's a way to start trusting, whether it's coaching, whether the coaching you do or I do, is you have to give them something of value, and also that they realize that there is so much within them. The power is really within you to do whatever you want to do with your life.
Yeah, And so good you're saying that, because that is really actually the point, right? So that we recognize it's like a vessel, right? And when you look at what people are willing to spend for their cars, to clean the car, to make it more comfortable, to have big wheels, whatever, right? And what they're investing in their own health. So they drive with a super cared car to the fast food store and eat fast food. So it's sometimes it's just crazy, and the relation is just wrong. So how we see life, but it's about awareness and consciousness, and we can understand if you are brainwashed over a long time and you're only consuming all that noise from outside and you believe in that, then yeah, you might not recognize what life is actually looking like, and that you have the opportunity also for free to have a healthier life. And the same is with food. So if you would just have vegetables and fresh fruit and so on, so maybe it's, even if it's organic, it's not as expensive as if you go to a fast food. So sometimes it's really strange, right? So but it starts with recognizing and going the first steps and being consequent, more and more consequent in life. It is possible, and that is really what is very important, what needs to be. It is possible that you can have a healthy life and you can stay healthy, and you can also do it without all the attachments, and also not needing to buy this and that and doing 10 additional courses. Just by doing very simple things already, you can have a healthier life.
It's almost hard to create that momentum.
Yeah.
You got to start creating the momentum. You got to just take that first step. And then you got to enjoy the journey, and then enjoy the journey, not just look at the end destination.
Yes, and with people like you and somewhere outside, to see they are not alone. No one is alone. So we are all walking each other home, we say.
Right.
So and we find so many people who had maybe a similar experience. So that's why it is good to have connections, collaboration, find the groups, find resources where we can find help, support, and also connect to other people who might be of help, to just give them advice or get advice, right? So exactly. That is actually good that we are in an era now where we have the internet, where we can get information. So one thing what I wanted to ask is about the age. We were talking about that already kids are exposed to alcohol a lot, or drugs, or even gambling. So are you also having more younger people or even kids in your
program? Fortunately here in the United States, because they've introduced a lot of sports betting, it's becoming also an epidemic on college campuses. So I just had a student, my youngest person was age 22. He's still in college, but his parents, wanted to make sure, because he had earlier this year, was really struggling, ended up with some good grades, some poor grades. And, the parents were afraid that, he was not going to graduate. So, we started over the summer, over the kind of 18 weeks. So I have people as young as 22, as old as 69. So they kind of gives you, most of the people probably in their 30s and 40s, but I'm seeing that there's going to be a lot more younger people, because the cycle of addiction, because the way you got to understand the gambling industry, they're trying to speed up gambling. So they're trying to create more and more opportunities for you to bet within an hour. So that means that it's no longer going to be like a 20-year addiction. You're going to go from start to finish within 5 years, because with all this live betting, this prop betting, and just the way, whether you're at Vegas or any type of casino, the games are designed to move faster. That's why so much is now digital, video poker, video slots. So now you're going against a computer. So it's going to speed up. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have younger students, and I know that there's gonna be more college age. They're even if they're not in college, young people in their early 20s reaching out because they're going to be underwater, and because the other thing is because it's kind of early on that a lot of people are giving them easy credit. So they get like some type of credit card or a payday loan, and then they
It gets
totally
even worse, no?
right. And then it just becomes a cycle, and now you just don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to address also the college age, early 20 crowd because it's unfortunately a growing crowd.
Yeah. So I can imagine it's very challenging for parents. So do you have a call to the parents, or do you have an advice how they can deal with a situation when they recognize that their kid is going into that cycle?
Well, like I just had on my podcast one of the parents talk about it. So it should be episode 164, where a parent named Matt was talking about, had his son, him and his wife, hired me to help their son. And so I did want that perspective. So, like on my podcast, I did have, the young college student come on and talk about his experience with the Recovery Freedom Circle. That's the name of the system. And I also had the parent because I want parents have to realize is they also need to seek out more information.
Yes.
It's not about
It
so
can
many,
be ignored,
unfortunately,
no?
I'll tell you what the biggest problem what parents do is they'll send their child off to a 30-day, well, nowadays it's either 21, 28, 35, or 45-day treatment center, and thinking that the treatment center is going to completely heal or stop the addiction, and they're going to do zero work. This is like, they wrote a check to the university. It was, you're going to get your degree. And the parents have to then really study and learn addiction and the specific addiction, whether it's drugs, whether we're talking about heroin, marijuana, we're talking about alcohol, we're talking about gambling, we're talking about sex. And, parents really have to understand what type of environment that they created, what other maybe
Where
behaviors
does it come from?
right. Well, they may have facilitated. They may not have originated there, but they may have facilitated and enabled it. And so there's other ways that to be parents have to do a certain amount of emotional work. And so I'll give you an example. So when the parents signed up and signed up for the system and paid me for to coach their son, I also gave them access to the same system. So it was just like almost like a one-time fee, but then I allowed 3 people to technically participate. It's almost like 3 for 1.
Oh,
So
that's
then
very
I
good, no?
encourage, because I know that the parents need help. And I also tell the parents straight out, though, you cannot put your head in the sand.
Yeah.
You need to learn. Because if you stay ignorant, the child may or may, stay clean, or they may relapse. But if you start learning and knowing how to address your addicted son or daughter, then you have the opportunity for much more positive results.
Yeah,
And
it has so much more impact, no? Because on one hand, so it's about the support of the child, because a child, of course, everybody would feel it if you are supported really, also from the energy again, or if you just do your thing and please clean yourself up and don't bother us too much. And for the parents also, maybe they're carrying themselves an addictive thing with them, or know that from their parents. So speaking about generational, and so they have the chance now also to look into that, right? I can imagine very often they might discover that. So,
and there is sometimes
consciously or unconsciously, so that this is happening then that they
right. And unfortunately, you'll have certain parents will really take it to heart, and other ones that really almost have blinders on and will say that no, it's that they don't have really any types of issues. And it's not enough to write a check. You have to participate in the recovery of your child. And it can be a lot of things. Sometimes I just tell people, why don't you read a book about codependency? I always refrain, like a lot of people do. There's a famous book out there, Codependency No More, by Melody Beattie. She was kind of like the forefront I tell people at least listen to some podcasts or read some books or even go to Netflix. Netflix has got some great movies around addiction and documentaries just about learning or just about meditation. I go, there's so much information out there. There's no reason to be ignorant. You can gain so much knowledge, and it's just up to you as how much knowledge are you willing to. Yes, and it does require work. It takes time to read a book. It takes time to keep listening to a podcast, even if you just listen for a month, one episode each week for a month, or it takes some time to watch, 2-hour movie. It doesn't. You have to invest time and money.
It's a question what you value, right? What
Right.
do you want to value? Do you want to value life and peace?
Well, do you want your child to get better?
Or want to repeat the karmic cycle again and again?
Right. Like my parents said, when I finally, took the initiative, I went to therapy, I went to 12 steps, and I asked them, I said, at some point, didn't you question whether or not I was going to start to mature? And, my mom said that, well, she had thought that I would grow into it. Well, that's not a good philosophy, hoping that your child grows into it, because a lot of us can still remain stuck in our immature ways, insecure ways, because we just don't know where to turn, or we don't have the resources, or whatever it is.
So many things happening out of that, right? Like it's really like a chain reaction. So when you got stuck here and you didn't learn how to deal with the emotions, or that you get triggered and you need this or that to feel better. Yes, and it's really another cycle starting. So it's really important to look at this. Yeah, so very, very insightful. Thank you so much. Maybe for the closing, is there any call to action you want to say?
Well, call to action for your audience. If they want to learn about addiction and how to deal with addiction, listen to my podcast, The 1% in Recovery. I'm on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, as well as separately, you can find me within the show notes. I'm also on YouTube, but my channel on YouTube is Life is Wonderful Love. So it's a little harder to find, but you can get the link in the
we can distribute that.
Right. And so to me is if you truly want, my podcast is free. It's a way to just learn about recovery. I don't spend a lot of time talking about the addiction. A lot of people want to listen to stories. I don't do that. I talk about the solution. I talk about the healing.
Focus on the positive, on the healing.
Well, yeah, to me it's got to be about recovery, healing, and growth and solutions. And so I talk about character, I talk about steps, I talk about, where we are, and, or I bring in certain guests that talk about it. So that to me, my call to action is just find my podcast. And if something resonates with you, then get more in contact with me. There'll be a link to my website. And then, there's ways to get where I have either free or paid information, but it all starts with the podcast. My podcast will allow you to really learn more about me and really learn about addiction, because I've been doing this for over 25 years. I know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And so I can help you. And, a lot of times I can help you squeeze down that learning curve so you don't have to feel like, where do I start? And I make my podcast short and sweet, 15 to 20 minutes.
Despite of hours, because it's a bit longer session now. Yeah, thank you so much, because I guess there's really a lot outside, a lot who are maybe not speaking about already and really wanted to change. And in these times where we all more and more encouraged to look at ourselves and go on a transformation and be inspired also by people like us, like others who did the work and changed their lives. So maybe 2 last questions. How do you find your energy in life? So doing that work when you have to do a lot of podcast sessions, coaching, and so you seem to be very active in that area. So how do you find your energy yourself?
Well, it took over 50 years to truly find my true purpose and calling in life. Because once I believe that God gave me various gifts. One was to be an addict, and and then on top of that, to fall in love with recovery. So I feel like I'm doing, in my words, God's work, because I understand addicts. I'm more comfortable around gamblers, alcoholics, drug addicts. I understand their thinking, whether they're in the addiction, whether they're in early recovery, or whether they have long-term recovery. I get you. And so that's where I get my energy, because I feel like this is what I was put on this earth to do. Unfortunately, I had to go spend 20 years in addiction, spend over 25 years in recovery. It took a while. It's not something I was going to get early on in life. I needed life experiences so now I can be able to create videos, coach, create systems, get out there, get on stages to speak, because it's just truly what I believe in. But it also goes to what you're saying is putting in place either behaviors, foods, people that infuse me with energy, with love, all that stuff, that's validation, acceptance, all the stuff that we all want in life, that we know what I'm doing is. So it just gives me the extra energy. And it does, I think, believe in that you have to look at every piece of what you're doing in life, and so that's what gives me the energy and just kind of excitement. Each and every day I get to wake up, and I wake up every day on my knees, grateful for my life, and then I'm able to do something, and I choose to do something positive and bring harmony to this world.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work, Hugo Vrsalovic. And yeah, life is wonderful. .love, beautiful website domain. Wonderful. Exactly. So let me close the doors of our safe space, to not forget that. Yeah, was great to have you here in the podcast show. Let's create a healing temple. Also a big cornerstone, what we were talking about, addictions. And we will distribute the links and also some information around your program and your offering with a podcast show. Hopefully you could take away a lot of good insights. And if you're thinking about changing your life, maybe because you're suffering from addictions in kind of alcohol addiction or gambling, so reach out to Hugo and make your first step. Everything is possible. In every minute, we can change our life. It's just important to be in the present moment and make your decision and go. Let's create a healing temple together. Thank you.
Thanks.